Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Attorney Tim Kohler with the East Carolina Law Group. You can find us online at eastcarolina.law.com. You can also look us up on Facebook. You can tune in to The Pirate at FM 95.3 in the Outer Banks in eastern North Carolina, as well as The Block 96.7 FM. If you listen to rock and roll, you're going to be tuning into The Pirate, and if you're going to be listening to hip hop and R&B, you can listen to The Block. The East Carolina Law Group is the official law firm of East Carolina Radio, and we will be doing an hour's program on the radio stations every Wednesday starting at 5 during your commute. And you can submit questions on our Facebook page, submit them through The Pirate or through The Block, and some of them we will select to answer on the air. Just be aware that submitting a question does not create an attorney-client relationship. Don't submit any personal information other than your first and last name so we can make sure there's no conflicts. And submit your questions, and it may be selected to be heard on the air depending on the topic for the week. You can check the Facebook as well to see what the topic of the week is going to be. And this coming week, we're going to be doing a lot of business law and that kind of thing, and things that are affecting local businesses in the Outer Banks. So anyway, tonight we're going to talk a little bit about what is very prominent in our immediate area with the close proximity that we have to Norfolk Naval Station, which is the largest naval base in the world, as well as our proximity to Elizabeth City Coast Guard Station, Cherry Point, North Carolina, Jacksonville, Fort Bragg, as well as Fort Eustis, Dam Neck, Oceana, and that sort of thing. And that is military divorce and military division of pensions and things of that nature. And so one of the things that I want everybody to keep in mind, especially if you're a military member and you are watching this video and you're going through a divorce or you're contemplating a divorce, this is important to understand. And when I was in the Navy, we used to have folks on board that we would call sea lawyers. And sea lawyers are basically just everyday schmucks who think they know everything there is to know about the law or about regulations. They're the guys who always try to come to the rescue if you get into some kind of trouble, or try to advise you on how to do something, or the command can't do this to you, and this kind of thing. They're guys who usually end up getting in trouble themselves, getting kicked out. But any way you look at it, there's a lot of misnomers that fly around the military, and one of the very prominent ones is that if you get married while you're on active duty, if you're married for 1 minute or 50 years, that spouse is entitled to half of your pension. This is an absolute 100% myth, particularly in North Carolina. Pension benefits, as far as military retirement, are divided according to what is called a coverture fraction. Okay, and for some wonderful information, I'm going to go ahead and plug my very dear colleague, Mr. Mark Sullivan's book, and this is the Military Divorce Handbook. Mark Sullivan is actually a North Carolina attorney and a retired, I believe, an Air Force colonel, and he is very, very, very well versed on military law. He has literally written the book. Anyway, he is an absolute guru on military divorce, especially on division of pension benefits. So anyway, you can actually find that book on Amazon, and if you know how to read legal text and you understand legal text, go ahead and get it. If you don't, and you have an attorney, you should probably suggest that they get it. This is on my desk all the time, and I use it all the time. It's a wonderful book, and Mr. Sullivan's an excellent attorney and a wonderful resource. So before we get too far off topic, talk a little bit about military divorce and division of military pension benefits. First thing I want to point out to you is this, is that under federal law, division of federal pension benefits for military members is absolutely preempted by federal law. So no matter what your state statute is, federal law preempts it. Marbury v. Madison basically established federal supremacy, so this is an absolutely a federal subject matter. So federal law preempts state law and how these things are divided. So it's not necessarily going to be divided the same way like a state pension or private pension is going to be divided. Federal law preempts the division of military pension benefits as well as Social Security and things of that nature. So one of the things I do want to point out is that under federal law, military pension benefits that are disability retirement benefits, disability compensation, disability pension through the VA, and Social Security disability are all federally exempted. They cannot be distributed. Now, in North Carolina, they can be used as a distributional factor. We're not going to get into that, but that is important to point out. Furthermore, if you have a situation where a military member has opted for disability versus longevity retirement, the court can actually treat that as a voluntary distribution in order to avoid paying the former spouse, and they can factor in other things to make up the difference. So there is some way around it, and sometimes you end up with a situation where part is longevity retirement, part of it is disability, so only part of it is exempted. The one thing I want to make sure I point out is that, going back to my initial assertion that the whole 50-50, no matter how long you've been married, is BS, is basically that the way a curvature fraction works is that there's an equation that's done. And what the military member has to do is take their total number of months of service. So their total contiguous amount of service. So say it's 100 months of contiguous service. And let's say they've been married that the marriage lasted 50 of those 100 months. Okay? Well, that spouse would only be entitled to 25% of the total retirement accrued during that 100 months. So does that make sense? So let's look at the typical situation where you have a retired military person of 20 years exactly, 240 months. And let's say they were married throughout the entirety of that 240 months. Well, then that spouse is going to be entitled to half of the pension. However, let's say they've only been married for half of that 240 months, so 120. Well, coverage fraction would say you take that and you divide it, and what would come out is that the other spouse would be entitled to 25%. See how that works? You go ahead and try. Now, it's never usually that simple. However, it is important to point out that it's a coverage fraction, which means that if the day you were married to one person, they were entitled to 50%, you got divorced a month later, and then you remarried and then got divorced from that person, you'd lose every bit of your retirement. Well, it doesn't work that way. Coverage fraction would basically parse it out by months. Okay, so it's important to understand that. Now, for the spouses in this, for the non-member spouses, the important thing to remember is that although you may have your husband or wife and they're a retired military member, unless you did, as far as healthcare benefits go, they may have done 20 years and be entitled to TRICARE for life. However, if you haven't had 25 years of marriage attributable to service, meaning they had to do at least 25 years active duty, and 25 of those years had to be subject to the marriage, or they could have done 30 years in the military, and you were married for 25 of those 30 years. As long as you had 25 years, you can maintain what's called survivor benefits and keep your TRICARE. If you don't, though, you're going to lose it upon the date of divorce. So those are important things to remember. We're not going to go any deeper into it from that. But it's important to point out that it's not simply cut and dry. 50-50 doesn't work that way. That spouse is not necessarily immediately entitled to your 50% of your benefits, and vice versa. So make sure that if you are in the military, it is absolutely crucial that you find an attorney licensed in your state, not a JAG. Go to them, talk to them about your rights, pay for the consult, and retain counsel, because you could lose a whole lot more than what you stand to gain by not hiring an attorney. The couple $1,000s it may cost you, even up to $10,000, is not worth a lifetime of losing half your benefits if they're not entitled to them. Have a great day. Thank you for your service. If you're military members, again, check us out online at eastcarolinalaw.com, and we'll see you around.